Thank you for coming out tonight. Can you hear me now? So we have some great topics to talk about tonight. We have Ron Mazik, who is our district board certified behavior analyst, who's here, and he is going to talk about some behavior support strategies. And we also have Virginia Covert, who goes by Ginny Covert, who's going to talk to you about medical assistance and how to get that and what that can do for you. Also, Mr. Dissinger is here from Hillendale Elementary School. He's the principal out there. Any Hillendale familiar faces here?
Holly is here.
Yeah, Holly. So we're happy to have him here. And also Dave Listman is here from the district as well. And he's going to speak to you in just a minute about just a district announcement that we wanted to share. Did everyone get a copy of the agenda for tonight? And we'll have that up here. And also we have new U-PRISE flyers that the technology department made for us, our communications department made for us. So feel free to take one of those or take a couple if you want to share them with anyone, any friends, any school members. I know the PTOs have been giving those out. Just trying to spread the word. And also remember that we have our website. If you go to ucfsd.org and go to departments, special ed, and I apologize, my screen is gigantic up on the computer, but then you can click on U-PRISE and you can go to the home page, and on the home page is where we have posted all of our upcoming meetings, and linked to them are the agenda. You can also see our Twitter feed. If you go to community resources, thank you to all the parents who've been sharing community resources. On here we have a list of just everything going on in the community that people have been sharing with us. Some upcoming holiday shopping things, some sensory-friendly Santa visits, special needs ice hockey team, a safe movie, and the Barn at Springbrook Farm is hosting some individual events. So all of those things are up here. We're constantly updating this document. The advisory committee, just to touch on, I know some of the members are here, but anyone's always welcome to join the advisory committee where we work on prep and planning. Right now, the advisory committee is busily working on the May meeting, which is going to be a community resources fair in here. So we're really excited about that, and they're putting a lot of work behind the scenes to make that happen. Also, the speaker series is up here, and Dave always does a really nice job for us of summarizing the meeting and what was talked about, and recapping, and then putting the video link up here. So you can see October's series is up here, and they actually broke down the video into each of the technology speakers' presentations. So again, we'll do that for tonight. We'll have this on the video, so if anyone missed it, they are welcome to log onto the website and see it. Just a reminder, there's no meeting in December because of the holiday, so the next time we'll meet will be in January 25th, and we're going to have Brenda Eaton coming out from the Chester County Intermediate Unit, and actually hopefully some of our own district teachers to talk about executive functioning and some of the supports and strategies and the curriculums that we're using in the district for that. All right, so before we get started, I will let Dave come on up and speak.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm Dave Listman. Many of you know me via email. A lot of emails come under my name. I like doing things like this and then putting together communications like this and working with groups like this. But another part of my job is communicating bad things when they happen as well. So has everyone read the email from John Sandville today? So we are, we're saddened, we're outraged, we're befuddled. There's all sorts of different thoughts that come to mind. And I just wanted to check in with you and give you the opportunity to ask any questions if you have any about Ms. Mofford or what has happened here or anything at all. I just wanted to sort of be here to see, to gauge some of your reaction. And if you hadn't read it, to tell you more about it, but it sounds like everyone's read it. I think John also, while we were sitting here, sent out a voice message response as well. But we're here to help everyone. Tomorrow in the high school, Jim Connolly during homeroom is going to get on the morning announcements, and he's going to talk to all the students. He met with the staff this afternoon. As a matter of fact, staff throughout the whole district after school stayed and got briefed on what was going on and morning, and how to move forward with students tomorrow. The biggest impact is in the high school. That's where the students are, and counseling services, administrators, teachers, and everyone are ready in the morning to address any concerns and talk to the students. And also with older kids, you have issues of social media, and you have issues of talking about things, and we want to share with the students. Think about it. This is an opportunity to demonstrate that you have learned all these years, from Olveus in the elementary schools, anti-bullying, all of those things about good behavior. Let's be respectful, and let's work together and work through this. So that's a lot of what's going to happen tomorrow, as well as counselors being available to talk to people and things like that. So, anybody has any questions?
Will there be just a general announcement that counseling is available and the kids can access it?
Yeah. So at the high school specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So during homeroom, when they come in, instead of all of the normal announcements that they get, Jimmy Connolly is going to come on through the television and give about 5-6 minute comments to everybody. And then the teachers this afternoon will brief on all of the counseling services and what to do. So we'll share with the students some of the things I'm saying right now, and as well as services. And just encouraging people, if you have, if this triggers something in you, come talk to us. If you have any concerns, come talk to us. If you feel uncomfortable, come talk to us. Some people know the different students who are involved, or there's rumors about that. Whatever they need. The counselors have pushed their schedules aside, and they all met today to talk about what they were going to do, and met with the social workers, and we brought some other people who normally go around to different schools and have them at Patton and also at the high school. So in the morning, that the students will get a briefing on that.
The name of the person has been given in the email, which is surprising for me because I'm not used to the American system. So what happens for our children? I understand she was a parent, so is there any support provided to her children? Is there anything the community can do to help the children of this person? Because they would be in a very sad position.
It's so sad. I mean, it's just
I'm
hard
talking
to
about our
imagine.
children, yeah. So is there any help that can be provided? Can we do something?
Let me ask the social workers that question specifically. They have, there are all sorts of issues in terms of even bus transportation home today. So a mother is arrested. Are we going to transport those kids home? So the social workers brought them in and talked to them, shared with them. I haven't really gotten an update on what happened, but their first thought was to protect those two children. There's two children. And then to arrange special transportation for them, and to contact their emergency contact and let them know what was going on. So all that was taken care of. But then tomorrow, what services do they need? Will they feel comfortable being in the classroom? Do they need some time off? So it's really very individualized. I was there with the social worker as she was kind of going through what the protocols are for them. But I think that's part of the message that we as parents share with our students as well. Here's someone who's hurting, going through all sorts of things. What can you do to create an environment to make it safe for them and to be sympathetic for them? But I will ask that. Is there something the community can do as well?
Or even if you need volunteers to help with
Thank
these
you.
kids.
Thanks.
No, I don't work, so it's easy for me to.
Is there a dialogue that is suggested or recommended for parents to have with their kids? I mean, obviously many of us, or all of us, don't know the specifics of it, and based on our legal system, it's an allegation. No one's been found guilty, and I think, that there has to be, is there sort of a way that we as parents should be educated on speaking to our kids about that?
I think that's a very good question, and I was actually going to see.
He's pointing to you.
Because I have some, I mean, it's built into our, it's based on a lot of our curriculum, and that's why I mentioned things like Olveus and character counts and things that started at the young ages, and that a lot of Jimmy's conversation is going back to those things. It is a lot like anti-bullying. It is a lot about, working together. It is a lot about respect and understanding, and those are the key messages that I know the social workers were talking about today. Specifically for parents, I don't feel I'm in a position to do that, but I think you've been, you may be.
I mean, a situation like this doesn't really, it doesn't have nearly the impact at the elementary level that it does certainly at the high school and even at the middle school. But as far as, what guidance we can give parents as far as how to talk about it, I'm at a loss for that. I mean, our school counselors could probably help with that, but I think what the message that we often give to our kids and to our teachers, and I'll give another example is the election. I mean, that created, as you can imagine, that created turmoil. And the way we approach it at the elementary level, very different than the middle school and the high school, but the way we approach it at the elementary level is those are discussions that you need to have with your parents, that those are not discussions you have at school, that this is something that you talk about with mom and dad. And then at that point, if mom and dad need help with that, as Dave said, we have people here that can assist with that. I know the elementary school, absolutely, that have resources, both print, online resources that they can share, sort of on an as-needed basis, and they're certainly more than ready, more than willing to do that.
Another question I had is, and if you can't answer this, I certainly understand, but I believe the email said this person was a paraprofessional, and I'm not familiar with this person. So are the victims in this situation people with special needs? I mean, are these people that are vulnerable? And is there a potential for other victims to come out?
Two things. So one is I wanted to follow up on your first question, and that's if you have further, if you would like more advice on what to talk to your children about, what we've done is we've asked, every administrator, and we briefed the office managers today, call the office or email the office. The counselor will call you, or someone will call you and have, a one-on-one conversation with you. So please take advantage of that. We don't know what we don't know, right? But we know enough that you could think that, how do we know that it's only what it is? We don't know what else is out there. So we want a safe environment for our students. Safe, but we also want it safe that if this triggers something, come out, right? I mean, if there are people who are potentially other victims but don't feel safe coming out for a variety of different reasons, maybe as parents talk to each other, maybe as they see other things, they will get the sort of help they need. So that's kind of where we're thinking about that, what would happen, and just, I think, trying to create an environment where the treatment comes out.
Thank you, Dave.
If they did work with kids that have special needs, though, I mean, if we know students that she worked with, are those students being approached by a counselor, or because they may not be able to come out or express it to their parents, or is that being addressed?
Yes. So we know every day and every classroom. So the person works for STS, Substitute Teacher Services. They vet, they have all the clearances, all of those things are there, and then they sub for us. They're on the list and call them up. 25 times, I think, over the past year and a half, something like that is what the final number was. Of all of those days that that person was here, we know when they were in an office or when they were in a classroom. We know that in the high school, they were there 11 times, and we know what they did on all of those days. We have talked to, and it wasn't always, I mean, I think about half the time it was like in the office or doing things like that. So the times that the person was in a classroom, we talked to the teachers who were there and tried to address those issues specifically on an individual basis. Is that an answer?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just picturing, you know, if she worked as a para, then she worked as a one-on-one with a student.
Oh, no, she did not. No. So she was not a PCA. She served in a role as a general paraprofessional, just an educational assistant to a teacher, not one-on-one with students. In her substitute, right. In special ed, we say paraprofessionals for PCAs, so right, different than that, yes. So, yeah. So, and just with that transition too, I mean, if you have more questions, I do want to get to the topics for the speakers that we had tonight, and obviously, I mean, we all have lots of questions about this. So maybe Dave could field some more questions at the end, but I do want to give our speakers a chance to talk, and that's obviously why you're here tonight. So thank you, Dave, very much for addressing that. And again, if you have questions, we can talk about it more at the end. All right, so Ginny, we'll let you go ahead and talk about medical assistance. I can pull up the presentation.
I'm going to swing around someone from the screen.
Okay, that's not the first slide. Okay, as Shannon said, my name is Ginny Covert. I'm the Medical Access Coordinator for the school district. My desk is here in the district office, so if you ever need to contact me, my telephone number and my email address will be at the end of the slide, or if you're ever in the office and you just have a question, you pop in, ask the receptionist, and I can pop out and chat with you. I do work part-time, so if you try to contact me and you can't get to me, I'll get back to you as soon as I get into the office the next day. So tonight I wanted to talk to you about medical assistance and the school-based access program. And basically these are the topics that I'm going to cover in each slide. I guess I don't have to go through them at this point, but the first thing I wanted to talk about is what is medical assistance? Some of you may already have medical assistance, some of you may have not ever heard of it. So basically, medical assistance is healthcare insurance with the broadest coverage of medical and mental health services for persons under 18 of any insurance plan. It often covers services that are not covered by your private insurance, and it also has no annual or lifetime caps on services such as physical therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy. It can be your child's only insurance, or it can be a secondary insurance. One thing that's important to note is that the income of parents is not a factor when determining eligibility for a disabled child. And they define a disabled child as a child who has a documented physical or mental condition that very seriously limits his or her activities. And that condition must have lasted or be expected to last 1 year or longer. Also, medical assistance insurance needs to be renewed annually. The way to apply for medical assistance is you can do an online application or a paper application. The online application is Compass. It's the Compass website, so if you Google it, or you will have the link when you go back to the website with the slideshow later, compass.state.pa.us. And if you, can you click on that? And so I can show them what the website looks like. So this is the home page, and they have apply now in all these different sections, but I think if you start here, you get to the same place if you hit apply now. And then you would create a login and a password and begin the application. One thing that's really important is the application can take 20 to 45 minutes or sometimes longer depending on how many people are in your family. So you don't have to do it all in one sitting. There's an application number, or they call it an e-form. Just write that number down, and then you can go back and work on your application in various different steps. Okay, if you decide that you don't want to do it online, you can do it by paper. It looks like a really long application, but again, it does take a little while to get through. And this is the cover page of it. They have it in all the different languages. So if you are Spanish speaking or any other of those languages, you can get the paper application or the online application in the language of your choice. One important thing to note when you're applying, I think if you go down to where it talks about who you're applying for, maybe page 3, tell us about yourself and then tell us about your family. Right, does the person have a disability? Where do I see that? I think you just passed it. Here it is. Does the person have a disability? If you're applying for MA, the chances are the answer is yes. And the question there says, if yes, what is the disability optional? Well, that's not really optional because if you don't provide the supporting documentation, you probably will not get approved for MA. So I would strongly suggest that you provide as much documentation as you can in the application process. Okay. You can get assistance in the application. There's a state hotline. You have the Delaware County Assistance Office, the Chester County Assistance Office. You can call me, or any of the school social workers should be able to help you with an application. It's good to pull together some information before you apply. You need certainly to have your documentation of your disability, but other things that they'll be asking are for your monthly income, which is not, it doesn't determine your eligibility, but they do ask for that information nonetheless. Other insurance policy numbers for your child, if applicable, Social Security card, birth certificate, that kind of information. Okay, and then moving on to the next step, the School-Based Access Program, also known as SBAP. The School-Based Access Program is a partnership with families that allows the school district to receive medical assistance reimbursement for certain IEP, medically necessary health-related services that are provided at school to your child. Other key partners in the SBAP program are the CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Service, the Department of Public Welfare, and the Pennsylvania Department of Education. If you consent to participate with the school in the SBAP program, it does not affect or limit your benefits that your child receives outside of school. So allowing the school to bill the MA doesn't affect the limits in any way. So how the program works is that your student has an IEP and they receive the services in the IEP. At your meeting, you would be offered a form that's the consent form that's only a one-time thing. So you only have to sign it once, and then at all your other IEP meetings, you shouldn't need to sign the form again. After the child receives the services at school, there's certain paperwork that goes through, and then funds would be reimbursed to the district. Those funds need to be used within the special education program, so it enhances or augments services that we already provide. I have a link to the billing consent form, which may look a little different than one if you signed it before, because we just got a new system. But basically, it goes through that you're aware that there's a federal program called the SBAP program, that it doesn't limit your services in any way outside of school, and that we can only bill for MA if you consent to do it, and that if you consent, we need to share your information with the other partners in the program, and you also have the right to change your mind if you decide to. These are some of the services that are eligible for reimbursement to the school in the SBAP program. So, many students will have a personal care assistant. They might receive special transportation or physical occupational therapy, social work, speech and language while they're in school. Those are the kind of services that we can receive some reimbursement for. So if you do not give consent, will your child continue to get the IEP service? Of course they will. Your refusal to give consent doesn't impact negatively their services, but we encourage you to consider giving consent, as the funds do help pay for additional special education services. And even if you don't think you want to consent to the SBAP program, I encourage you to apply for medical assistance if you think that your child would qualify for it, because it is helpful for the families. Of course, will your child benefit from the funds that the school receives? Yes, because they're in special education and there's strict guidelines. The money that we receive needs to be used within the special education program. So some of the things that we can use for the reimbursement for would be like special therapy equipment, additional staffing that weren't in the budget, if we have to adapt one of the vehicles differently, things like that. Will you have to pay monthly premiums or co-payments in SBAP? No, there are no monthly premiums or co-payments. And if you change your mind, would we have to return the money? No, we do not need to return the money, but we would stop billing and we would not get any future funds through the program if you change your mind. So this is my contact information. My name is Ginny, but I go by, my name is Virginia, I go by Ginny. So my email starts with a V, not a G. But hopefully some of that information was helpful to you, and I'll stick around. If anybody has any questions afterwards, I'd be happy to discuss anything with you.
Does anyone have any questions that would be good for the group?
I was trying to get on that compass, and I think it's requiring case numbers and things that you wouldn't have if you're not in there already. So I'm not so sure you can, I think it kicks you out if that's your first time application. So I think I'd emailed you that, but we just finished the paper form instead. So I think you can't go in online unless you have some case or
It
Medicaid.
does ask you for a case number.
It asks you
Yeah,
for a
and
case
it
number
won't
when you
let you
first
advance.
apply.
A case, well, it's a county number and a case number, which
Yeah,
is
and you
just
can't
all-
move forward
and you
without it.
can't move forward without it.
So just
Even
do
when
the
you
paper
renew.
form, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that shouldn't be the way it is. You know, let me call the county assistance office and check on that, because I've never gone through front to back with the online form. I have answered some questions along the way with people, and this was the first time that came up, that you couldn't get through without a case number. So let me follow up on that. And
Is it on the-
When you're renewing, and you do have the option now to renew for more than 1 year at a time.
oh, that's good news. Yes.
Because I accidentally did that last year. And then panicked when
Okay.
June came along and they said, oh no, you were already renewed till 2017. So there is that option now.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Yes.
Is it only for American citizens? Or is
Uh,
it, if you're a taxpayer, does it still?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that
What was the
question.
question?
Is it for just U.S. citizens? Does it say on the form if you're, does it ask if you're a U.S. citizen?
Pennsylvania residents, I think is what it describes.
Maybe you could look into that, Ginny, and
Oh,
touch
yeah.
base with her personally and let
I
her
will,
know
yeah.
later. That
I'll
would be
get your
great.
information afterwards and I'll.
I would guess if they're enrolled in the school, I mean, there's a whole process for them to be enrolled in the school, and I would think if they're enrolled in the school and have gone through that process, they would be eligible, I would imagine.
It's pretty much the same documentation too. You would need to register for school.
Yeah, I'll just double check that for you. Yeah. Okay, I
Great.
did have a one-page handout. I don't know if everybody picked one up, but it's sort of just an overview of medical assistance. So there's one over there if you need it, and if we ran out, then I can get some extras.
Okay. Thank you, Ginny.
Thank you. Yep.
All right. Now we'll turn it over to Ron to talk about behavioral strategies.
Thank you, Jenny, for that. Everyone, my name is Ron Mazik. For those that came in a little bit later, I am the district-wide BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst. I came on board this year, so I'm pretty fresh here. I did go to school here for several years, so like Steve, he was my teacher back in the day, which is pretty amazing. I'm sorry, he was not. To give you a little background about myself, before Unionville, I was with CRESS in the CCIU for about 4 years. I started as a TSS and a PCA and worked my way up to a behavior specialist consultant, and then additionally then provided over the last year and a half services for advanced clinical services. Similar to what I'm doing here, writing functional behavior assessments, developing positive behavior support plans, consulting with staff, except that was across the entire county. Now you have the privilege of having me in this district, and hopefully as the years go by, you'll probably get a chance to see me in some of the meetings, and hopefully I could be a resource for you guys whenever you need it. So, Steve, you're my guy today. So there's so much in terms of behavior analysis. I really wanted to focus on a few areas that would be, hopefully you guys would be able to get something out of. Hopefully one or two things. Y'all look pretty savvy here, so, if some of this stuff is information you already know, I apologize. But, and again, if you have any questions in between, just raise your hand and let me know. I hope we could have a nice little dialogue here. So, essentially, what is ABA? I'm going to talk a little bit about applied behavior analysis. It's a field within the science of behavior analysis. Some people, believe it's somewhat synonymous with maybe discrete trials or other methods that are used. We don't necessarily, as a behavior analyst, I'm not going to say I do ABA. It's not a method, it's more of a science. So we try to focus on that. There are different fields within the science of behavior analysis. There's organizational behavior management. That's where they work on performance, motivation within actual organizations. There's experimental analysis of behavior where they actually work with rats and other things to get them to press levers and do different things. So the applied component of it is, all right, we learn all this stuff in the laboratory settings. We learn all these different things. Now we're going to actually apply these in real life settings. And it's never perfect. It's never pretty because, real life, there are a lot of variables involved. So what we try to do as behavior analysis as behavior analysts is try to incorporate those things that we've learned in the laboratories, experiments, and bring them here. I wanted to touch base on a few common misconceptions that I've heard over the years, and maybe after this list, if anybody has any they might have heard as well, I'd love to hear from them. If not, that's okay. But I've got 5 here. Steve, you can click on them. So the first one, I kind of touched on it already. Applied behavior analysis and discrete trial training are the same things. Now, does everyone know what discrete trials are? Does anybody? Nobody? Okay. So you've probably seen it before. It's where intensive teaching. It's another term we use. We may call it table time, where we're working. We have a learner on one side. We have the teacher on the other side, and they're either presenting different things in terms of picture cards. What is this? And they respond, it's a bicycle. Or what is your name? And they respond, what it is. So there's that discrete trial component where we're actually looking at building a lot of short responses over a long period of time. So sometimes you'll see that, they're doing ABA over there. Well, yeah, ABA principles are incorporated in that, but really what they're doing is discrete trial. So I don't mean to get too technical, but sometimes it's interesting to notice that if you're starting to look into this a little bit more and want to research it a little bit more about what applied behavior analysis is. It's more than just discrete trials. There is a lot more to it. So I wanted you to understand that. ABA is only used for treatment for autism spectrum disorders, right? Maybe we've heard that as well. I could tell you that what ABA is actually utilized, I mentioned organizational behavior management, gambling addiction, drug treatment, a lot of different areas that they're actually using these principles of behavior to change the outcomes of other things. So, which leads me to the next one, I believe. It's only effective for young children. Yes, it's true that most of the supports are provided to young children, and that's typically, if you start looking at how that actually works up until 21, you get a lot of supports. But you find that, again, as I mentioned with gambling addiction, things like that, it's actually working with adults. And more studies are coming out that shows that adults can actually, even adults with disabilities, can benefit from applied behavior analysis and utilizing the principles throughout their lives. So ABA is maybe considered harmful or uncomfortable for children. You may see that or hear of that. Okay, so in terms of what we believe in, we always want to focus on positive approaches. We want to build skills, right? If we could build skills, problem behavior could typically go away. So it's not always harmful, or it shouldn't be harmful or uncomfortable. If it is, it means somebody's doing something wrong. Okay, so we want to make sure that the most effective learning and teaching is actually coming from things that are not harmful, that things are actually embracing. Okay, and then the last one, maybe you've heard of this, ABA produces maybe robotic behavior. When I was going back talking about discrete trials, sometimes over time, if there isn't generalization, meaning basically if they're not going and learning these skills in different areas and environments, sure, it might produce some robotic behavior, but again, that could be because it's being applied incorrectly. So we want to make sure if we are looking at discrete trials, or if you have a home program at home, make sure that there are opportunities for that generalization. They are going out into the environment, the community, and practicing and learning and identifying different things the same way they would be doing that in the home program. So there's Homer Simpson here. All right. So in terms of that, I want to kind of transition a little bit more about what I do and why function-based assessments are important. Right. Typically, behaviors they can look similar but mean different things. Right. So if it's something you could take home today, for instance. Just for example, I may want to go get a glass of water, get a drink of water at the water fountain because I'm actually thirsty. Or conversely, I might actually want to go to get a drink of water because I don't want to be in class, right? So there are always things that could be, you've got to look at the context. There are always things that could be happening that we need to look into a little bit deeper. And once we're able to do that, then we could identify function-based interventions and things that we can do to actually change those behaviors. So in terms of, yep, I think we're good with that. Is it not working? Okay, you get a little more Homer Simpson there. He's thinking about function-based interventions. I can go into... okay.
See my technology.
Favorite Simpsons episode? No. See if I can get a good memory here. I can pull this off. In the meantime, do you have any questions? Is there anything that I brought up so far in terms of any misconceptions or anything that you guys might have heard in the past? Did I get it covered? Pretty good?
It works for only younger children.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I hope you realize that it doesn't. It really does. It is very effective for other folks as well. So to give you a brief overview of, so we talked about the function-based assessments. I do functional behavior assessments oftentimes. We're looking at different reasons for why that child or individual is engaging in those behaviors. And it really boils down to 4 different things. It could basically, 2 different categories is either access to something, whether it be tangibles, attention, maybe sensory stimulation, or escape, right? Escape from demands, escapes maybe from uncomfortable social situations, maybe pain attenuation, right? These are all things that actually result, when we break it down, this is what we're actually finding. Now, oftentimes it's never that simple, right? We could find that, maybe a student, initially engages in behavior to escape from a work demand, but then in turn gets attention from that behavior. So we are always kind of looking at different avenues, and once we're able to understand the function of the behavior, again, we're able to determine what the best function-based intervention is, right? It's important that we know this because if we were just blindly saying, all right, well, this person's doing this, understanding, if we're just looking at that behavior, it's not necessarily going to give us too much information. So that's why we really want to look into the why. Okay. So in terms of what I mentioned, the function-based interventions leading these assessments leading to these function-based interventions, these interventions are going to focus on 3 areas. We're going to focus on prevention. We're going to make the behaviors ideally irrelevant, right? We're going to change the environment to where they don't have the need or the motivation to engage in that behavior because it's dissipated. We've taken care of it for them. There's no motivation there. Or conversely, we don't make it available. So you got to look at those two components: motivation and availability. How valuable is it? If we can make something less valuable in terms of needing to either escape a demand or access something preferred, that's what we're going to be doing. Additionally, we need to look at teaching alternative responses. So instead of throwing a book or something to get somebody's attention, maybe we're going to teach them how to raise their hand. All right, these are just examples. There's a million different examples. And then we're going to reinforce the desired behaviors. You've probably had this experience if any of you have any home programs or have wraparound or even see in some of the support plans. We really work on maybe token systems, economies that reinforce appropriate behavior. So in terms of, you guys probably want to get some information. All right, well, this is great. How do we incorporate this at home? What are some of the things that we can do to really, make maybe our lives a little easier, a little better? And I don't have a magic pill, unfortunately. I don't have all the answers because every child and every student is individualized, right? But what I can tell you are there's some overall strategies that we can incorporate and utilize that will increase the likelihood of productive and desired outcomes. So in terms of good goals, I just wanted to recap some of these things. And when we talk about goals, I'm not talking about IEP goals. I'm talking about goals that what do we want to see behaviorally, right? What do we want to identify in terms of what we want to change, and what do we want instead of that? So really we want to make sure that a couple things. Goals can be observable, they can be measurable, right? So observable, I mean, can we see what is actually happening, right? Although I don't discount internal events, they happen. They happen to everyone. The problem is we can't see them, and we can't determine necessarily if those internal events are changing. Are they going up or down, right? Maybe what we can see is maybe a correlation between a certain behavior that's actually coming out of those internal events. So those are the things we might want to keep track of. We also want to remember the WH questions when developing a goal. Who is going to be working with this individual? When will this goal be? When will we be working on this goal? What are we actually trying to accomplish? So we want to look at the who, what, when, where, how. We also want to focus on picking battles, want to focus on that. I'm sure you've heard that before. And really focus on important goals. In my opinion, the most important goals are ones that impact safety, number one. And number two are that occur most frequently, right? So typically you really want to focus on goals that have those things incorporated. Don't do more than 3 goals at a time. You're really going to get overwhelmed by these things. I think that's a good place to start. Elopement, other things, maybe a child's running out of the room or the house, those types of things. Those are areas that you might want to focus on first. An example, this is way, I don't expect you guys to have like examples like this at home. This is just something I'm trying to give you a kind of a exaggerated example of what maybe a good behavior goal would look like compared to a bad behavior goal. So just for instance, when instructed to do this, Bobby will imitate 10 randomly presented movements with an 85% accuracy across 3 consecutive sessions, right? Compared to Bobby will follow directions in school. So what I'm trying to get across is we really want to be detailed, all right? So we want to make sure that, we understand it, the other person that's working with them understands it, and it's very clearly defined, okay? The ABCs. So you've probably heard this before. Antecedents stand for A, behavior stands for B, and consequences stand for C, right? And consequences, when we talk about consequences, sometimes synonymous with punishment. It is not the case. It's simply outcome. What happens after the behavior, okay? So, we could talk about reinforcement. Was the behavior reinforced afterwards? Was it punished? Yes, there's punishment and consequences, one or the other. Reinforcement simply increases the future probability that behavior occurs under similar conditions, all right? So that just basically means that we do this, this happens, it's more likely to occur. Punishment is the opposite. So we're talking about the future probability that behavior will actually decrease under similar conditions. That's all we're talking about when we talk about punishment, decreasing problem behavior. So these are the components of any support plan. When you look at positive behavior support plans that I might write, when I was doing wraparound, similar components on each one, I would encourage you guys, if you do have RAP and you have BSCs, really look at this, make sure that there are strong antecedents, there are strong behaviors and consequences, replacement behaviors and consequences in this document. A couple examples, we'll have more later too, but just to give you an idea. So we're adjusting, for prevention strategies, we're adjusting the environment around us to make the problem behavior less likely to occur. That's what we're doing. If we can prevent it from occurring in the first place, great, right? Fewer demands, easier tasks, just changing a few environmental factors, we might be good to go. In terms of teaching replacement behaviors, yes, we also want to make sure that we're teaching a child a more appropriate way to respond that serves the same function. Right? Remember I mentioned throwing the book or raising the hand? They're still accomplishing the same outcome. They're still getting escape from that demand. And then outcome strategies, consequence strategies, want to reinforce replacement behaviors and other adaptive responses. Those desired behaviors we want to reinforce. All right, so we could go back, we could go into the next area here, Steve. Looking at some just general antecedent strategies, there are millions of them. Not all of them are going to fit into a perfect box, and some of these might resonate with you, some might not. But give you an idea, we want to make sure that, if we could remove distracting stimuli, maybe during homework, right? We could pull some things out of the way, make sure we have a certain area where we could focus on just getting the work done. Adjusting the lighting. I could tell you, fluorescent lighting sometimes plays, pretty harsh role on my eyes. So if there's a way to, incorporate the lighting, some kids have more sensory needs than others. So really incorporate that into any plan that you have, if it helps. Minimizing noise, right? If possible, we could do that. Some kids like headphones. Actually, some kids like to listen to music. But again, these are just some strategies that you might want to incorporate. Visual cues are always good, right? So we could talk about visual schedules. We could talk about things, bins. We could talk about signals through different colors. All those things can be very helpful. If you guys have heard of the TEACH program, they really focus on a lot of that type of antecedent prevention strategies by just making sure that the students know where everything is and what to do. This can be done at home and everything else. So in terms of a couple good ones here, placing desired items out of reach to encourage appropriate requesting. I did this a lot during my wraparound years where a student or a child would grab for something and they might lunge across the room or over the desk to grab it. Well, one of the easiest ways to correct that is just making sure whatever that desired tangible item is just out of reach, right? You could simply then prompt them to do that. Or you could put something that's maybe a preferred toy in a jar that's really tight and they can't open it. They need you to open this jar. So that's where you become a social mediator, where now all of a sudden direct access isn't getting me what I want. I actually need to come in contact and communicate with somebody else to make sure I get what I want. So that's how we want to start looking at those things. If we're finding that access to a tangible was serving that function. In terms of the last one, follow less preferred activities with preferred activities. First, then you might have heard that before. First, eat your veggies, then you get your ice cream. Grandma's rule, same thing. You can incorporate that with a lot of different things. I find that pretty effective, in terms of, for consistency purposes. You can use visuals for that as well. It doesn't work for everyone, and some of you might have already tried these and it didn't work, that's fine too. In terms of other antecedent strategies, prevention strategies, when we determined or hypothesized that the function of the behavior is escape maintained, we're talking about chunking materials down, making it a little more manageable, easier. We want to make sure we're modifying the length or number of demands. Oftentimes, if we're finding that the student just can't do 10 problems in a row, we could break it down to we're finding that they could do 7, then we want to shoot for that number maybe first, and then fade it up a little bit while they increase tolerance. Sometimes it's just increasing tolerance. Adapting materials. I love this one, offering choices in the activity. I keep finding this more and more as I do more research about these strategies. Offering choices seems to be, it pops up all over the place. And really, you could offer choices in a forced choice kind of component. You might have heard this before, where, we'll go back to the dinner time, the vegetables. Do you want to eat green beans or peas tonight? Both are maybe preferred or less preferred. And they have an option. They still have the kind of eat their vegetables, but they at least have some buy-in and they have some support in terms of making those decisions. So if you can incorporate that, even with homework time, you want to do these problems first or these problems second, really getting that in and encouraging that is really going to go a long way. And then if we could encourage, incorporate child's interest in that as well, that would be great. So we talked about antecedent strategies. Now we're going to talk briefly about replacement behavior strategies, things that we can do. But I first want to kind of have you understand a little bit more about what we're talking about here, because if it's a performance deficit, basically meaning the child can do this, they're just choosing not to do it, that's one thing. We want to start looking at motivation there. And that's where consequence strategies come in. That's where we look at reinforcement. Now, if they can't do it, if it's a skill deficit, so we need to work on how do we teach this skill to make sure they can do it, right? So that's where we want to start looking at those things. Sometimes it could be a little tricky. Steve, you could click on the, as we go there. Here's an example. You might have heard something similar to this. Johnny's able to tell me exactly what he needs to do in a certain situation, but can never do it in the moment, right? He's got the skill down mastered. He can tell you exactly what to do, but applying it in a generalized setting, not happening. Some might say, well, he can do it. He can't do it. He's just choosing not to do it. Well, one might argue that he really can't do it, and we need to make sure that we're providing enough opportunities to make sure that he is successful. So that's where we want to start looking at, is it a skill deficit or performance deficit? We really want to understand those things. In terms of, before jumping over to here, in terms of teaching replacement behaviors and teaching skills, there are a lot of different assessment tools that one could use. You might have heard of the VB map before, where we focus on language and skill development. The ABLES is similar to the VB map. There's another one, it's great, it's called Essentials for Living. It's actually for older individuals, students that are really looking at maybe more daily living skills, that's broken down into how to break these things into small components and tasks and able to incorporate that. And if you guys have any questions again about any resources, please let me know when you get a chance. So once we're able to identify those skill deficits, then we're able to develop the appropriate strategies in place. In terms of reinforcement, now that's the last component that we're talking about in terms of the consequences. I want to focus on reinforcement because I think that's the most important. Again, I already mentioned this. Reinforcement is anything that increases the future probability that a behavior occurs under similar conditions. And reinforcement isn't always the same for everyone, right? Maybe a tickle to somebody could be reinforcing. For me, it certainly isn't, right? I do not like to be tickled. So that's actually, in my opinion, maybe punishment. So we need to look at that. Ultimately, ask yourself the question, is the behavior that we're looking for increasing at the end of the day, or is it not going anywhere? If it's not going anywhere, it's not reinforcing. It isn't. So you really want to look at other ways to maybe explore other options, expand interests. Maybe if you find out they really love M&Ms, well, maybe you need to increase the schedule of reinforcement and maybe deliver it a little more frequently. Those types of things, you go look at that as well. So these are some of the types of reinforcement. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here, naturally embedded within the activity. These things just naturally come to us, right? Some natural reinforcement could be water, it could be food. These are just things that naturally when we it's innate within us, So those are things, just to give you, there's a primary reinforcement, right? Everything else that we do, whether it be social, token, all those other things, actually there's secondary reinforcement that actually relate back to primary one way or another. We start breaking it down. But at any rate, social, we look at smiles, high fives, praise, all those things. It's great. It's easy. It's cheap. It's free. We can do it right away. But again, some kids don't like that. So again, we need to make sure that we're focusing on strategies that are individualized. Token systems, I mentioned these before. They can be effective. I would argue, though, that you really want to make sure that you have strong primary reinforcement or secondary reinforcement after that, to where you're ensuring that either, number one, that once they earn maybe those 5 stickers or 5 stars, that they are getting what they were promised. You'll make sure that that's happening. If it isn't, then you might run into some problems because it's just not going to be effective. Activities, other great things at school, right? I see these in elementary schools all the time. Kids get to be the line leader, or teachers help it, or working with a peer. I forget when I was a kid how great those things were, right? So some of those things we want to really remember that that could be incorporated at home. I'm sure you could adapt that to make sure that there are other ways to maybe help with cooking, and getting dinner ready and those fun things. Tangibles, of course. What else do you need to say about that? Making sure that they don't become satiated with those things. That means like overly reinforced and it loses its value. Sometimes the best ways to do that is to, if you're really looking at changing a behavior, a specific one, make sure that desired response, that outcome that you want, I'm thinking of toilet training, for instance. So if I'm ever doing a toilet training protocol, I'm making sure that whatever reinforcement we have that is super highly reinforcing, it's exclusive to initiating or voiding in the toilet, right? So we're making sure that that's only available then. Makes the desired... Yeah, sure, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm rambling here. Just make sure that increases the value of that reinforcement, and make sure that it's always it's quite valuable for them. So we can. So what makes a good home plan? I kind of touched on a lot of those things. Steve, you can continue on here. Clarity. Make sure that whatever plan you guys do have, it's clear. You could pick it up and you could read it and you know exactly what it is and how it's going to work. I've run into a lot of home plans when I was in wraparound, picking up other maybe behavior specialist plans from in the past, and it's all over the place. There's a lot of stuff involved in there, and frankly, once that happens, I could go into the other ones too, but a lot of times it just becomes a document, right? So we don't want that. We want to make sure it's very clear. Go to the next one, please. Thank you. Consistency, right? So when we're implementing a program, everyone's on the same page. Parents are on the same page. Maybe direct support personnel are on the same page. Consistency is probably, hopefully, your takeaway here. Whatever you do, be consistent, and it's going to go a long way. Clean, and I say clean. The other option was simple, but I wanted to go with the 4 C's, and there's something you remember. Clean, keep it easy. Don't have too many don't have too many pages. I've seen documents where they're 20 pages long. Keep to 5 to 7 pages if you can, max, right? So really focus on just the priorities. A certain, the first couple problem behaviors or target behaviors we're looking at, and keeping it simple. So again, if you have wraparound, might be a great opportunity to revisit these things when you're meeting with your BSC. Go through it, explain. These are some areas that I just don't understand. Do we need to keep this in the plan? How do we streamline this? Right? I think those things can go a long way. And then continuation. Do we have a plan going forward once they're successful and they meet these goals? What's after that, right? Where are we going with this? Have a game plan with the next steps and strategies. May change, right? Students, individuals, they mature, things change, everything is sometimes different. A year before you didn't expect certain things. So, but always have a game plan, be ready, and be optimistic, because I think that's really important, right? These are things that you want to make sure that you're getting there. And I think I'll probably touch on it again, but really, keep it simple. Keep it really, really simple. Focus on the little things and the successes that you can build on, right? You don't want to have the aspirations up here, and you're up here, which is great, could be awesome, but you didn't get up here, and then you're disappointed, you give up. So I really encourage you to start small and build up. So a couple key considerations to avoid, just in general, home strategies, is assuming expectations are understood, right? We want to make sure that we're very clear with our kids. My 7-month-old, I'm telling him, hey, you don't poop in that diaper anymore. So, but no, we really need to make sure that we're outlining exactly what they need, what they want from us, what we expect from them. That'll go a long way. Other considerations, calling things out from a distance. Let's not be shouting, hey, let's do this, do that, right? Anything really important, you want to make sure you're getting their full undivided attention and telling you things you already know. Transitioning without warning. It doesn't work for everybody, but sometimes it gives those, if they're playing a video game or something like that, and you say, hey, 5 minutes, coming up, gives an opportunity to, and maybe even impromptu as well, find a good place to end, or pause, right? So gives them that ability to end it. So multi-step directives depends on your child, but I certainly want to avoid throwing too many things at them at once, rapid fire, and I can't keep track of those. I doubt they can. So really keep it clear, concise, right? Kind of touched on these already, being aware of the situation. One thing I did want to touch on is setting events and precipitating factors. Those are all things that occur, whether you're tired, hungry, all those things play a very important role, right? So if we're finding that they're not doing their homework today, maybe there are other factors involved that are overriding these things. So we really want to make sure that we're actively paying attention to those things. In terms of additional key considerations, one method that I like to follow, especially maybe during social skills and other programs, is the tell, show, we do, you do type of program. So for instance, today I'm going to teach you how to invite a peer to play. I'm going to show you now. I model it, right? So we're talking about modeling. Then we're going to do it together. How are we going to do this, right? Then I'm going to take the training wheels off, and they're going to do it themselves. We're transferring it back to them. So those are things that we're going to want to look at maybe doing, incorporating that type of, that kind of methodology whenever you're trying to build a skill. I think it's worked in my experience. Rewarding flexibility, right? I think certainly kids on the spectrum are we know the flexibility can be a very difficult thing. So when there are opportunities for that, when we're able to encourage the flexibility, take advantage of it, right? If you couldn't go to Outback today, instead you had to go to Applebee's or something, and they're okay with that, awesome. Really, really praise and reinforce that type of thing. Focus, I'm telling you stuff you already know, focus on positive messages instead of the negative. So I like how you, instead of don't do this, right? I'm sure we catch ourselves sometimes because it's a little easier to do that. But if you're able to flip it and find it and turn it into a positive message, you're now giving them the opportunity to know exactly what they need to do. When you tell them not to do something, well, you just took away what they know how to do. So you need to make sure you replace it with something. Okay. Timeout, how many of you have used timeout in the past? Anyone? Yeah, okay. So timeout actually can be an effective strategy if we're utilizing it appropriately. Now, I have a link here. I encourage you guys to check it out. It gives you a nice little step-by-step understanding of what a timeout is and how it's most effective. But here's just an example, and you can kind of think about it. So if we're at school, a student tosses a worksheet on the floor and is sent to timeout for 5 minutes. Comes back in, follows the same behavior pattern, right? Going back and forth. What could possibly be happening? Any thoughts? Right? Escape, right? Potentially. So timeout is actually not a good thing in that situation because now they're escaping that task and demand. Now, timeout works best when there's already time in, right? So they're engaged in something preferred. If you're able to remove that preferred activity due to certain behavior, then timeout is more effective. But again, I would really encourage you to read that article. I think it drives the point home. in terms of how to build on a positive message, as well as making sure that there are some strategies in place to really understand it. It's real easy, simple, step-by-step type of program. So, yeah, sure. Yeah, why not? So there you go. How to make timeouts work. You could scroll down. Probably so there's like a ad there, but basically, you can see exactly. Yeah, you can block that out. Effective timeouts, making sure advanced warnings, those types of things. Quick responses, again, making sure that you're doing it immediately. Kids aren't going to remember, an hour from then what happened. So make sure you're keeping it very immediate. One thing that I thought was a nice little mention in there, use number of time. So base the timeout minutes on the child's age. So if the child's 5, timeout for 5 minutes. 7, timeout for 5 minutes. I wouldn't go below 5 years old, probably not. But so yeah, you can see there's a lot of good step-by-steps. What to do after timeout, make sure that they're not escaping any demands, so make sure presenting those things again. There's always good opportunities, catching them being good, build that therapeutic rapport back up. Because a timeout, technically, if it works, is effective, is considered a punishment. It's supposed to decrease the future probability of behavior, okay? So, but those are things that you can, potentially incorporate at home. I don't want you to be completely opposed to it because it can be an effective strategy. But just make sure you understand the processes and understand the methodology for that and not making it worse. So we are in presenter mode, I think, at this point. You just hit next. We're almost done, guys. So I throw a lot of information at you. You might need additional support, right? This is a lot to take in. This is a lot for a parent. We're busy, right? In the 21st century, we're all working, we're all doing different things. Got a lot going on. So if you haven't explored wraparound, I would encourage you to explore that. Ginny touched on how to get MA first. That's important. You need that first. Then you could get into BHRS, Behavioral Health Rehabilitative Services. There are a lot of other services you can explore as well. There's family-based mental health services, intensive care management. But in terms of the plans that I feel would, if the strategies I suggested, I feel like your BHRS team would be best suited and fitted to help guide you and help give you that extra support that you might want. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what BHRS is, might be review, but it's designed to be short-term intensive behavioral intervention services, right? So we're talking, 6 months to, well, sometimes they go a lot longer than that. But the goal is to work ourselves out of a job. When we were there, we were making sure we had the strategies in place. You empowered the parents, empowered the family, and faded ourselves out. That doesn't always happen now. Autism spectrum disorders is a lifelong disability, so we understand that there are always going to be changes, and you might need these services up until 21. That's okay too. But I feel like the most effective strategies and the best outcomes are typically occurring when you look at the initial stuff. Each county is a little differently. I know Unionville-Chadsworth School District is comprised of Chester County and Delaware County, so you want to make sure that you're utilizing the right managed care organization. CCI, Community Care Behavioral Health is Chester County, and Magellan Behavioral Health. They're a little more challenging over there in Delaware County, but they are the people that you would want to reach out to. So we can skip over that. You can see that there. You first need to go to a core provider. That's basically somebody who's going to evaluate you or your child. And then at that point, you can then reach out to other service providers. I'm partial. I work for the IU, Home and Community Services. I thought they have a lot of great staff there, but there's other ones. There's Holcomb, there's Deborah. There's a lot of different ones out there. So the wraparound team, real briefly, just to give you an overview of what this is. BSc, Behavior Special Consultant. You can move on to the next. TSS, Therapeutic Staff Support. These are terms you might have heard. MT, Mobile Therapist. And Case Manager or Case Specialist. The roles, just to give you an idea. So the BSc will complete the FBAs, write the treatment plans, consult about interventions to the family and TSS. And we're going to ensure, when I was doing this, we ensure continuity care across settings. So I would actually go to the schools, work with the teams at the school to make sure that we're on the same page with everything, right? So that's the great thing about wraparound. If you can incorporate that, certainly we'll embrace the BSCs to come in to make sure we're all on the same page with things. TSS, similar to PCA in a degree, but they're going to be transferring skills to parents. They're less hands-on, and they're going to be making sure that they're kind of modeling interventions, working with the kids, showing you guys how to do what you need to do. The best ones can really do a great job. MT, they're mobile therapists. They write their own treatment plans, and they also work on either, working on therapeutic relationships with the child or the family members. If the child's disability is or behavior is impacting the family or the parents' ability to do anything, essentially, they can actually work with the mobile therapist can work directly with the parent as well. These are all covered through medical assistance. There are no copays or anything, so it's an additional service. There's a website there if you need to check it out. I know U-PRISE, a special education website has some really good information about it for MA. The IU also has really good detailed information about how to get it step by step. So if you need it, I encourage you to just go to that website and check it out. I think, so I have a few references here as well, just from how I got my information, and a few resources additionally. So if you guys need anything, I'm always available. And hopefully you gained a couple things today. Hopefully that was my goal here. And if you have any questions, I know it's getting late, but certainly happy to answer them, or feel free to email me or call me. Okay.
Thank you very much,
Great.
Ron. Did
Sure.
anybody have any questions
Thanks.
for the group, for the good of the group, for Ron while he's here?
Just, what is they have strategy for life courses in the high school. Is it something that relates to the ABA?
So which you said which courses?
Strategy for life? I think it's like
I think those are the life skills classes, yes.
Are they ABA?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, because in my mind they were the same thing.
It's a little bit different here. So some of our, the main ABA verbal behavior type classes that we have are at Hillendale Elementary School, and which is one of the reasons why Steve is here, because he can certainly speak to those programs. And then we also have a program at the middle school. Right now, we don't have any ABA programs running at the high school just because we don't have students who need it right this moment.
And I could add, though, to with any behavior plan that we're looking at developing, I always incorporate the principles of applied behavior analysis in those plans. Okay, so it's everywhere essentially. The principles are right. And remember, we're going back to VB and VB programming. Sometimes it's synonymous with ABA, in terms of what it is. But ABA is all around us. I try to incorporate that in everything. Again, I'm district-wide, so I'm supporting every school in terms of those things. So,
Right.
You mentioned Essentials for Living.
Mhm.
Is it a book?
It's a book.
Curriculum? What is it?
It's a book. It breaks it down. Patrick McGreevy wrote it. I would encourage you. It's pretty in depth. So I would say it may seem a little overwhelming if you don't have the eye for those types of things, because we're talking about task analyses, different things. But if you have a team member, or you have somebody that is very well versed in ABA, that could really help go a long way. Another book that might be a little more user friendly is called A Work in Progress. They give you a lot of great resources. I actually have it in my office too, if anybody wants to look at it. But so there's a lot of good strategies out there that they provide there. Yeah, for sure.
Great. Any other questions? We can certainly, Ron and Ginny are both here for a few minutes. If anyone had individual questions that you wanted to go up and ask. I did want to point out on the website, I forgot to show, same thing, ucfsd.org, and then departments, special ed, just like how you got to the special ed website. And then there was a menu for U-PRISE. There's also a menu for medical access. And so Ginny has placed on here an overview that Compass website and her contact info. So if you were looking for that, it's also here. So you can find this information in lots of places. And again, on the U-PRISE page, we'll post in a few days, give us a few days, and we'll post up the video and the summary from this meeting as well. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap for tonight. I encourage you to look around to people sitting next to you. I know we have some crews here. I see the Patton crew front and center. Good job, ladies. So I encourage you to say hello to the person sitting next to you, find out what school they're from, introduce yourself. Certainly part of our group is to network and find resources within each other. So thanks so much for coming out, and hopefully we'll see you in not December, but January for executive functionings. Thanks so much.
Great.